And let's start the podcast. There's a lot of news, and I've got a lot of comments.
Peter B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins, news and comment. It's Friday, April 21st, 2017. And in the era of Facebook, and we're on Facebook Live, talking to people all around the world today, you can't keep your birthday a secret anymore. So I won't even try. Today is my 64th birthday. And I have received bundles of greetings and congratulations from Indonesia, Australia, Crete, and all across the United States, friends in Europe. And I am delighted to be alive and well and yakking at you today. There is plenty to talk about. And a little bit later, we're going to open up the phone lines because we're making this interactive a little bit at a time. People are catching on that we're live here on Fridays. Yeah, give you my comments on what I consider to be the important news stories of the day. And then we open up the phone lines and see if you call and see if you want to talk about it. We'll be taking calls on the half hour, so you can wait to call or you can call in. If I do see the light flashing, I'll put your line on hold and you'll be in the queue. So that's how you can play it. I would love to hear from you today, talk about the issues that we're discussing, and I particularly want to ask for calls from outside the United States. I like to get offshore perspectives, and according to Google Analytics and other data that we get from YouTube, I enjoy a listenership that is scattered across the globe in 70 countries, and I am really thrilled by that. It's a cool feeling to know that the people in Crete who sent me a birthday greeting say they listen every day. And I know that we have a new pocket of listeners in Thailand who are accessing the Daily News and Comment podcast on YouTube. So wherever you are, however you listen, I'm glad you do. And if you feel like it, give me a call today. Lines are available all through this hour at 415-455-0102. That's 415-455-0102. We open the podcast today with a look at the surveillance state of the United States of America today. Because at a time when Washington is simply flooded with official anonymous leaks, the whole Trump-Russia scandal is driven by that. What do? Are they cracking down on government officials who have leaked about the phone calls with the Russian ambassador? Are they cracking down on the people who have leaked damaging information? No. They're going after WikiLeaks, and the latest effort under Attorney General Jeffrey Beauregard Jim Crow Sessions is that they're looking for a way to clamp down on WikiLeaks and indict or otherwise bring criminal proceedings or prosecution against Julian Assange and associates. Now, the Obama administration took a look at this. They were very determined after the Chelsea Manning leaks to find a way to shut down WikiLeaks. And the lawyers at the Justice Department determined that WikiLeaks is it's the equivalent of a newspaper or a television news outlet. And it does benefit from our First Amendment protections. Now, to me, there is a potential legal question because WikiLeaks is not based in the United States. Julian Assange is a native of Australia who is temporarily, for 5 years now, residing at the Embassy of Ecuador in London. And so it's not clear to me what the legal precedent is in terms of the exact status of an agency, an organization like WikiLeaks. They also might pursue a charge like theft of government documents, but prosecutors or someone at the Justice Department who spoke without being identified, yes, another anonymous source, said that prosecutors wanted ideally to pursue more serious counts against Assange. And so this is going to be, I think, an interesting diversion. We saw about a week or 10 days ago that Mike Pompeo, the new head of the CIA, unloaded on WikiLeaks and Assange in a speech in Washington. He said, WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service. But do they have proof? Do they have any evidence of these claims? That WikiLeaks got information that was hacked by Russian operatives and then put it into distribution. We've heard the allegations. It's treated as fact by most of the corporate media. But is there evidence? Is there proof? We've yet to see it. And meanwhile, the distraction of a crackdown on WikiLeaks and Assange, who is, kind of a pirate-like character, allows them to divert your attention from what's really going on over here. And that is that both the FBI and the CIA are desperately searching for the mole thought to be a CIA employee or contractor who they believe is responsible for the release of Vault 7. Now, Vault 7 came out from WikiLeaks, I believe it was in early March. It includes CIA hacking tools, and those hacking tools, if employed by the CIA, would look like the hacking was done by China, Russia, Nigeria, or anybody other than the CIA. We have established many times that it is possible to obscure your IP address and to prevent people from tracking down the actual source of a hacking attack. We know that the CIA has used those tools, and now the word is from the New York Post, based on a CBS TV report, that they've launched an investigation searching for a traitor inside their own spy agency. Now, this is limited to the Vault 7 leak. I want to be very clear. But the implication is that these same issues could apply to the kinds of events that occurred last year. And so let me ask my live viewers, do you have the feedback? Somebody tried to call my cell phone while I was originating the Facebook live feed. Okay, I've got thumbs up, you're back. Very good. Nice to see that. So my point here is that I don't have evidence that it was an inside hack or an insider who released the Democratic National Committee's server data to WikiLeaks. That's the allegation that was made. But Bill Binney and the other NSA insiders who I have talked to very clearly say that if it was a hack that came from Russia, that the NSA would be able to prove that. They would have the data and the trail to be able to establish that, and they have not made any public attempt to persuade us that that is the case. So I want to be clear that I am speculating about the speculation. Hi, Mitch. Good to hear from you. And hello, Billy. Thank you for the birthday greetings. So this really opens a lot of important questions. And it's one of the reasons that I remain skeptical about the central charges that the hack of the DNC was perpetrated by Russian intelligence, that Russian intelligence then handed off that data to WikiLeaks, which then staged its release. We don't have any evidence of that, yet it is treated as fact by our political leaders and by the corporate media. And now you know why I remain skeptical. Meanwhile, at the FBI, they're clamping down, saying that nobody can talk to the media without approval from the top brass. And this means that Jim Comey and his associates can continue to leak to their heart's content. Nobody will ever come after them and pursue them for unauthorized or illegal leak of classified information. But this is typical. They're going to crack down on the little people. And the people who work for the Director of National Intelligence have all been required to sign a policy that contact with the media is only permitted, with prior approval from high-ranking officials. And again, when you put this against the backdrop of the relentless leaking that is going on in Washington right now, this again shows that if you're, an executive official, a top appointee, an elected official, you can leak whatever you damn want. But when WikiLeaks operates in the interests of the American people to bust through the layers of secrecy that are mostly intended to prevent embarrassing information from being released, not secrets that really matter, well, this is a problem, and it keeps growing. Here in San Francisco, the FBI has agreed to pay almost $300,000 in a partial settlement over its inappropriate scrutiny of an online magazine, antiwar.com. Now, this battle goes back several years. After 9/11, antiwar.com published an FBI watch list of people who were being investigated. Following that, antiwar.com came into possession of an FBI memo that indicated that antiwar.com was being targeted for investigation by the FBI. Now, this crosses First Amendment lines. And the judge in the case split the baby, awarding legal costs, and the government will have to cough up about $300,000 to this little media outlet. But the judge did not rule in their favor, and this is a dangerous precedent regarding the First Amendment issues. Essentially, the judge ruled that antiwar.com suffered economic damages from the FBI investigation. But it didn't declare that the FBI operated outside the law. Now, here's another issue. At The Intercept today, Alex Emmons is reporting that at the super-secret FISA court, you may recall about 2 years ago, Congress made teensy-weensy modifications to the Patriot Act and to the other laws that permit domestic surveillance, or they claim gives them the authority for domestic surveillance. Well, that law included the role of a public advocate, a friend of the court who's there to represent the interests of the people of the United States and our Fourth Amendment rights. And in what we believe was the first episode where this public advocate participated in the deliberations before the FISA court, an attorney named Amy Jeffress went to the FISA court and argued that the FBI routinely violates the Fourth Amendment by giving agents virtually unrestricted access to data from one of the NSA's largest surveillance programs. The NSA harvests data from major internet companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, and they do it without a warrant because ostensibly they are only targeting non-Americans, foreigners. But the surveillance program sweeps up a large number of Americans' communications as well. This is what they call incidental collection. This is what Devin Nunes was talking about when he made his secret trip to the White House and held those bizarre news conferences before he properly recused himself from chairing the Intelligence Committee's Trump-Russia investigation. So this attorney Jeffress goes and makes the argument that, hey, the FBI should at least have to make a statement about why they need to see this information before they're allowed to access it. But the judge ruled in favor of the good old FBI. Are you surprised? Because after all of the hoo-ha, the PRISM program was found by Judge Thomas Hogan to be okay. And this is typical of what happens at the super-secret FISA court. As far as we know, the warrants that were issued to monitor this guy Carter Page, who had contacts with Russian spies in New York. They were trying to recruit him. They may have succeeded. Then he joined the Trump campaign, made a curious trip to Russia last summer. Well, the Carter Page warrant is one of the few cases where we're told that they initially turned down the application from the Justice Department. Most of the time, the court rubber stamps and approves these, and it's our rights that get lost in the shuffle. So it's nice to know that somebody was there representing our interests at the FISA court, but the outcome was no different than if it hadn't happened that way. And in the same story, we learned that Senator Ron Wyden, the Democrat from Oregon, is still trying to get an answer to his simple question: how many Americans have been covered by the Dragnet phone record surveillance program operated under Section 702 of the FISA law of 2008. And he still can't get an answer. Last week, the House Judiciary Committee renewed the request, sending a bipartisan letter requesting an estimate. The government published a document on Wednesday saying it will not provide the number, but demanding that Congress reauthorize the program anyway. Yeah, the Fourth Amendment is optional. And when it comes to a rogue agency by the FBI, like the FBI, they can do whatever they want. There is no real oversight. There is no outside intervention or objective monitoring of the business that the FBI conducts, and our rights are sacrificed in the process. And there's more about the FBI in a moment. But first, I want to mention that coming up on the half hour, I'll be taking your phone calls from anywhere in this wide world, and you can talk about any subject that's on your mind, and your humble host will engage in dialogue with you. Isn't that fun? You can call in at 415-455-0102. That's 415-455-0102, and I'd love to hear from you today. So it was 2 days ago that Reuters, which has absorbed the investigative reporting team that used to be known as McClatchy, D.C., and they're a good group of people. I know Jonathan Landay, talked to him many times, and his byline appears on this article. And before I give you the gist of the article, I want you to know that it is based on documents that are not public, and it's based on sources who are not identified beyond being described as three current and 4 former U.S. officials. So this is more information that comes to us without evidence or attribution. But what they're telling us is that a Russian government think tank controlled by Putin developed a plan to swing the 2016 U.S. presidential election to Trump and undermine voters' faith in the American electoral system. They're telling us that there are 2 documents, one that came out sometime last summer, which described the framework and rationale for what has been described as an intensive effort by Russia to interfere with our election. These documents came out of what's loosely called a think tank, but we're told it is deeply aligned with the intelligence community in Russia and staffed by former KGB people. It's called the Russian Institute for Strategic Studies. So the paper last June was circulated, but there's no list of distribution, who actually got it and who may have read it. We are told that it recommended that the Kremlin launch a propaganda campaign on social media and Russian state-backed global news outlets to encourage U.S. voters to elect a president who would take a softer line toward Russia than the Obama administration had. The second document, which is dated October and distributed in the same way, warned that Hillary Clinton was likely to win, and therefore they were adjusting their strategy to undermine her instead of trying to flip the election to Trump. Now, deep in this article is the appropriate disclosure and disclaimer. Ongoing congressional and FBI investigations into Russian interference have so far produced no public evidence that Trump associates colluded with the Russian effort to change the outcome of the election. And this is similar to what I've been describing. There is no public evidence about the allegation, now treated as fact, that Russia hacked the DNC and gave that information to WikiLeaks. And then the Reuters article goes down the rabbit hole that we saw in the intelligence community report dated January 6th this year. They claim that Russia today is so influential that shows hosted by Ed Schultz and Tom Hartman and maybe even a Chris Hedges weekend show were used to propagandize the American public. They talk about how a popular video which criticized the Clintons' charity, they had a separate foundation from the public Clinton Foundation where they would put money for tax-deductible purposes. And the piece said that 100% of their charity went to themselves. Now, as I recall, that's actually true. But here it is treated as a very underhanded attack on the Clinton campaign. And the implication is that Russia today and its companion Sputnik, and I don't even know where to find Sputnik. I have a friend who has an online radio show distributed through Sputnik, and I don't know a single outlet for Sputnik other than their own website. And Russia Today has a minuscule audience. And they exaggerate it to make it seem like, Russia Today, RT, is this state-backed media propaganda organ, and they act like every American watches it and is duped by it. It's just bizarre. Every day here I pause for a second and thank the people who support my work with your subscriptions to the Peter B. Collins podcast. People like Arlene Montemarano, people like Benny Alto and all of his pooches up there on the coast in Oregon, and folks like Jane Williams, too. I appreciate your support, and if you're not a subscriber, it's easy. All you got to do is come over to peterbcollins.com, find the menu button, click on it, pull down there, click on Become a Subscriber. It takes you to the sign-up page, and from there, you can choose a level that you're comfortable with, $5, $10, $20 a month, our $50 annual subscription. You can make a one-time contribution of any amount and send it to the P.O. box that's listed on the page there. I appreciate your support. I truly do. Trevor Aronson is a great American journalist. He's now publishing at The Intercept. And sometime this weekend, I recommend that you visit The Intercept and look at his mega series. It's in 4 parts, about 100 pages altogether, it looks like. It's called Trial, and Terror. And Trevor Aronson has taken the lead to expose the way the FBI has entrapped and framed hundreds of so-called domestic terrorism suspects in this country since 9/11. Most of them flatly framed. Many of them intercepted by paid FBI informants at a local mosque. Then the talk turns to jihad. Let's watch a little video. What do you say we go blow up a shopping mall? In many of these cases, the crime, the means to commit it, have all been proposed by the FBI informant, and their mark just said, oh, yeah, sure, dude. Yeah, let's try that. Then, when they actually attempt to execute, the cops pop up, cameras are rolling, and once again we are protected from another devastating plot against the security of the United States. And in Part 1, Trevor Aronson notes that almost 800 people have been prosecuted for terrorism since 9/11. Most of them never even got close to committing an act of violence. And I consider this to be really important, and I tie it to what I said earlier about the FBI. It's an agency that really operates on its own terms. When people are killed by FBI agents, you know who investigates? The FBI. And so far, they have never found an FBI agent culpable for a killing that occurred while on duty. Well, you may have heard Donald Trump tweeting and injecting himself in a really ugly way in the French presidential election. Yesterday, there was an incident in Paris near the Champs-Élysées, and a single police officer was killed by a French citizen. He may be a Muslim, I can't quite tell. But it's a guy who has a criminal record, and in fact, they had detained him just 2 months ago for threatening the police. And this is being treated as a big terrorist incident. And that's insulting to the people of Paris who have suffered through some very real and deadly terrorist attacks. This clearly seems opportunely timed to scare people in advance of the voting. And Donald Trump clearly favors Marine Le Pen, the far-right nationalist French candidate, who, shares his contempt for people who are other. And so as we see this play out, I hope people will be appropriately skeptical, and also I hope the people of France will be repelled by any advice coming from Trump. The so-called Justice Department under Jeff Sessions has issued threatening letters to cities and to the state of California, who declare that they offer sanctuary to undocumented immigrants. New York City is on the list. So is the state of California, Chicago, New Orleans, Philly, Las Vegas, Miami, and Milwaukee. And the threat is that if the sanctuary policies are not dismantled, and what they basically mean is that local law enforcement doesn't round people up and hand them off to immigration authorities. That's a federal responsibility, and when local law enforcement does that, it means that undocumented people will not talk to local law enforcement, and it breaks down public safety on the local level in a very serious way. But Jeff Sessions doesn't care about that because he's pandering to the Republican base, and they're threatening to withhold funds. There really is a legal limit to how much they can actually do that. I think it's limited to funds from the Justice Department to these entities, municipalities and states. And so I think it's a big threat, but probably doesn't have a lot of weight behind it. There are a couple of cases headed for the Supreme Court related to gerrymandering, and that's where the politicians who are in control of a state legislature draw the legislative and congressional districts in a way that favors the dominant political party. And to be fair, Democrats have done this in the past, but in my view, not so egregiously as Republicans are currently doing. So one of the cases comes out of Wisconsin, where the district lines were redrawn to sharply limit the number of Democrats who could be elected. And it was so egregious that it appears that the Supreme Court is going to take a hard look at this. Then in North Carolina, there is a June hearing scheduled at the court in a suit over the unabashedly partisan carving of the state into 10 Republican and 3 Democratic House seats in a state with more registered Democrats than Republicans. Now, this is an effort that we really need to take seriously, because the Democrats cannot regain control of the House of Representatives as long as so many seats are gerrymandered to be guaranteed to Republican candidates. Now, Eric Holder and Barack Obama, Holder being the former Attorney General, have said that they are going to lead an effort to change these laws state by state. I hope they're serious about it, and if it happens, I hope you'll support it. Also at the Supreme Court late last night, the court had issued a stay on the scheduled execution in Arkansas of a man whose name is Liddell Lee. And at 11:56 p.m. Central Time, the Supreme Court, with the swing vote provided by the newest justice, Neil Gorsuch, voted to overturn the stay and approve the execution. And Asa Hutchinson, the bloodthirsty governor of Arkansas, gave the command that Liddell Lee be given a lethal injection of drugs that were acquired in an extra-legal manner. So the court clearly is divided about this, and if Gorsuch had not been confirmed, it's likely it would have been a 4-4 vote, and they would not have lifted the stay on the Arkansas execution. And Justice Stephen Breyer said, in my view, the factor that this is driven by the expiration date on the stock of lethal drugs that Arkansas has illegally acquired, he said, when considered as a determining factor separating those who live from those who die, this is close to random. I've previously noted the arbitrariness with which executions are carried out in this country. The cases now before us reinforce that point. But it didn't bother Neil Gorsuch. Yesterday, I led my news and comment podcast with a shocking statement for many of my listeners. I said that they should let the bimbo talk, referring to the University of California, Berkeley, and the opportunistic demagogue of the right, Ann Coulter. Coulter is scheduled to speak to the young Republicans at Berkeley next Thursday night, and campus officials canceled the speech because of skirmishes on the street that were really contrived last weekend in Berkeley, where a bunch of pro-Trump people came and staged a protest, and then, of course, the predictable anarchist types came in and started a scuffle. Over 20 people were arrested. But to suggest that the University of California, Berkeley cannot provide adequate security to allow Ann Coulter to spew her bullshit is beyond me. And I am rigid about the First Amendment. I use it to the maximum, and so does Ann Coulter. And while I find her commentary despicable and her persona deeply offensive, I believe that she has the right to be that person and to express herself in that way. My latest in-depth interview at peterbcollins.com is with Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter David K. Johnston. I talked to David yesterday about the surprise that he got in his mailbox a few weeks ago, an envelope with no return address that included 2 pages of Donald Trump's 2005 tax returns. And with Johnston, I went through almost line by line the Trump tax return. He said in the dozens of interviews he's done, nobody else has done that, and I recommend the interview to you. And Mr. Johnston had some choice words for White House mouthpiece Sean Spicer and for the dude he works for.
Sean Spicer never had the good manners to respond to me, even though I emailed him twice. And secondly, he took my document and he gave it to my competition. Mm-hmm. That is the absolute single most unethical thing that anyone who's in the publicity business, and that's what Sean Spicer is the mouthpiece for the president. He is in the publicity business. That is the most unethical thing you can do. And it's revealing of the fact that Donald Trump, his boss, has no moral scruples of any kind. This is a man, who was involved up to his eyeballs with a major drug trafficker who put the life of a sickly infant, his grandnephew, in jeopardy over money, and who has swindled investors, cheated small businesses, and refused to pay workers for his entire life. He is a man with no moral scruples at all, period. Stop.
Stop, he said. And David K. Johnston has been investigating Donald Trump for over 25 years. He really knows the guy inside out. And I highly recommend our interview with Johnston when you have the time to listen. And here's a story from Austin, Texas. And it's rare that I cover an appointment to a state wildlife commission. But in this case, the billionaire Kelsey Warren, who is now infamous because it's his company that is building the Dakota Access Pipeline, the scene of the Standing Rock protests all through last winter. Well, Kelsey Warren is a controversial figure in Texas, and there are other pipelines that Texas protesters have tried to, protest about or bring attention to. And it turns out that Kelsey Warren has now been appointed by a state Senate committee to the Parks and Wildlife Commission of the state of Texas. And one has to ask, will this allow pipelines to be run through state parks? And I want to commend some people who I've gotten to know in Texas over the past year for their activism. Leland Potter and Charlie Pierce. They perform in a band called Choctaw Wildfire. Look them up. I found them on Spotify. They're a really good band with a great kind of roots bluesy sound. And Charlie Pierce went to a series of public meetings and tried to shame Kelsey Warren into backing off from the Dakota Access Pipeline. And part of the reason is that Kelsey Warren is a billionaire who also likes folk and country music. I think he even writes and performs some music himself, and he owns a little label called Music Road Records. And many of the progressives, and there are a lot of progressives in Texas, are members of or have been part of the catalog at Music Road Records. So they have a little extra influence there, and they have used it to try to get his attention and get him to back off from these dangerous pipelines. And I commend them for those efforts. So let's go to your phone calls. I've got lines open for you right now. The number to call in on is 415-455-0102. I'll say it again slowly, 415-455-0102. And I have no idea who's on the line. Say hello. Hello?
Peter B. Collins.
Speaking.
It's Brad Schreiber wishing you happy birthday from Los Angeles, California.
Well, thank you, Brad. Great to hear from you.
Thank you. I want you to know, as I've said before, and now I want all your podcast listeners to know that the interview I did with you for Revolution's End, my expose about Patty Hearst and the SLA and prisons and intelligence, was my favorite interview of all the people I've spoken with.
Well, I appreciate that, and it does warm my heart. You know, I do occasionally get compliments like that, and yesterday it came from David K. Johnston about my interview about Trump's tax returns. And so, you know, this is what I love to do, and I'm glad that people recognize that I at least sometimes do it well. But let me turn the tables, Brad, because you had a lot of courage to publish a book that broke ranks with the official narrative of the Patty Hearst kidnapping, the origins of the Symbionese Liberation Army, the special favorable treatment that the guy who called himself Sin Q received while he was in prison in California, and most notably, you revealed that Donald DeFries had special privileges at the Vacaville prison. Even though he was not married, he was allowed to have conjugal visits, and at least a couple of those visits were with an heiress from Berkeley named Patty Hearst. And you disclosed that Donald DeFries and Patty Hearst knew each other before Hearst was kidnapped, and that it appears when she broke off their little affair that's what ultimately provided the genesis for the kidnap plot. It's amazing work, 30 plus years after the events.
Yeah, there are lots of doors you can keep opening with Revolution's End, and I'm happy to say that I got the book out after being rejected by two publishers who accepted it, Peter.
Yeah.
And it was a long battle, but Skyhorse in New York, which, as you know, publishes the work of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dick Russell and many other people, Russell being crucial to Revolution's End being published in the first place. So I'm happy it's out in the world and talks about Dear Governor Ronald Reagan and his systematic infiltration of the left and the Black Panthers in the 1970s. And by the way, you know, you touched on so many wonderful topics in this podcast, not the least of which is the Intercept story, talking about how the FBI is setting up people and trapping people.
And Trevor Aronson, the author of this four-part series, I've been in touch, and he's agreed to tape an interview late next week sometime. So I'll have that for you, hopefully, by this time next Friday.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of what I wrote about in Revolution's End, in that Louis Tackwood, the LAPD police agent, just as Donald DeFries was, went on record in 1965, before the real rise of the Black Panthers, and said that there were 200 police informants working throughout the state of California, mostly black, mostly to infiltrate civil rights, anti-war activity, and it's part of the apparatus of the security state to, maintain order by using infiltration and clearly in this case entrapment of people who probably otherwise would have nothing to do with violent jihadist activity. So I'm glad that you're talking about that Intercept story.
Well, and Brad, for me, because I was hosting radio shows in the 1970s during the Hearst kidnapping, during Watergate, and I helped. It's not like I'm claiming I did it single-handedly, but I was part of many people who helped expose the FBI's COINTELPRO program, and in particular the plot that led to the assassination of Black Panther leader Fred Hampton in Chicago in 1968 or 69. And in my view, COINTELPRO never ended. They took it underground. They, kept the most egregious elements of it from continuing. But the attitude of the FBI is really little different today, perhaps only worse, than it was when J. Edgar Hoover was running that shop.
Yes, and what we see now, though, Peter, is that since 9/11, tragically, instead of communicating better with the rest of the world, we have gone in the opposite direction. We have built up many agencies that don't share information with each other, have huge budgets, and there are many nationalist movements, as you've talked about today, and I'm sure in the past. Talk about Le Pen, and obviously Trump represents a very nationalistic corporatocracy kind of approach to governing. Hungary has a virulent anti-Semitic movement. Mm-hmm. So this is, when we talk about resistance in this country, we also need to recognize that around the world we need to resist nationalism and fascism and authoritarianism. And it's not just in the United States that we're facing that. So we're part of a nationwide movement for a true democracy.
And Brad, before I let you go, I just saw a brief blurb that you have just published a new book about is it about the L.A. coroner? Is that?
You are too good, Peter B. I'm telling you. Death in Paradise, many years ago, was a book I wrote, authorized history of the L.A. coroner's office.
Is that Noguchi? Was that his name?
Yeah, Coroner to the Stars, Thomas Noguchi.
Right, yeah.
But so the book went out of print, and I thought, well, why don't you just create a Kindle book and only charge people $5 and update all the stories? And some of these stories are about high-profile cases, Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, old movie stars Thelma Todd. But then you and I would probably find interest in cases like talking about Donald DeFreeze of the SLA and his intelligence and prison connections, or Sirhan's assassination of RFK and the fact that he was hypnotized, and a security guard named Thane Cesar, who was very likely the person who murdered Kennedy, simply disappeared. So I've thrown up Death in Paradise on Kindle just a couple of days ago, and I appreciate your bringing it up, and wishing you the happiest of birthdays, and thank you for all the great work you're doing.
All right, Brad, great to hear from you. Thanks for the call, and I hope people will go and look at that at Kindle. It sounds like a good read, and let me know the next time you publish something, okay?
All right, thanks again, Peter.
We still want to get you up to Vacaville to talk to the writers group at the prison there, okay?
I want to do a whole Northern California tour that includes that, my friend.
All right, good. Thanks for the call. Good to talk to you. If you have a comment, give me a call right now. I'm going to wrap things up shortly if we don't get a few more calls. 415-455-0102 is the number here. 415-455-0102. Now, one of the stories that I've kind of wrestled with this week is the court custody battle between Alex Jones and his wife. And part of this is that I don't like to give a guy like Alex Jones any extra publicity or promotion. I don't respect him. And what has surfaced in this custody trial is the arguments from his lawyers that what he does on his radio show slash webcast is performance art. That he's not really the angry lunatic that he portrays, that he's a mild-mannered guy who likes to, eat burgers and jump in the pool with his kids. And I have no information on the private life of Alex Jones, and I don't particularly want any. But I will say that I find him and his persona to be dangerous in some ways, and so counterproductive in others. And I've made this case before, that I have serious questions and challenges to the official story of 9/11. I've done a lot of investigation. I'm not the least bit embarrassed to tell you that I don't believe the official story. I personally went to Washington at my own expense and covered the trials, the hearings of the 9/11 Commission. They were a twisted joke and a bizarre whitewash. My position is that we don't know the truth about 9/11. I don't offer any, alternate theories. Oh, it was an inside job. It was done by the CIA. Definitely the Saudis did it. Definitely the Israelis did it. I don't know. But I know the official story is bullshit. And on that, Alex Jones and I hold the same basic position. But my position, which I think is thoughtful and is based on deep investigation, interviews with dozens of people over the years, an examination of a lot of evidence, Well, when Alex Jones goes flipping off and calls false flag on an event that is only an hour old, when Alex Jones offers, what are truly conspiracy theories that are often unhinged and unconnected to any kind of evidence or reality, then it undermines all of the skeptics among us, all of those who fight for the truth in a world full of lies and secrets. And so I take no pleasure that Alex Jones is likely to lose full custody of his children in this court case. But when his lawyers say that, oh, gosh, he's just a performance artist, it's like, whoever played Batman or a supervillain, that was just an act. Well, if Alex Jones is just an act, then he ought to give it up. And it would really be healthy for the nation and for alternative media if he were to do so. All right, I got room for one more call here. Who's on line one?
Hey, Peter, it's Ian Berman.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for calling. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, and happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much. I'm holding up pretty well. It's been a busy day here. And I did want to mention that I recorded an hour-long video interview with Uber activist, that's not related to the Uber company, Norman Solomon, the guy who founded many different, like rootsaction.org. He was a leader in the Bernie delegates operation last summer, and we covered a lot of territory, including the surveillance state. So it's kind of jammed me up today, but I'm very pleased with the interview I got there, and we'll have the audio track for that as a podcast sometime next week. But, Ian, what's on your mind today?
I don't know if you saw the interview that Julian Assange gave on Democracy Now! Last week.
I didn't.
Okay. It was a very interesting interview. Assange is terrific, as always. But then for some reason, at one point, Amy Goodman brought on Alan Nairn to have a dialogue about whether Assange was actually helping Trump against Clinton. And I've never seen Nairn turn into a pro-Democratic Party attack dog like he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was quite inappropriate to treat someone like that in the way that sort of the Washington Post has treated Ed Snowden. In other words, Julian Assange has given so much valuable news information that Democracy Now! Has used. It seems shocking that they would put on Alan Nairn, especially Alan Nairn, as an attack dog, a guy who himself is a quite progressive journalist.
I did read a commentary that you wrote about that, Ian. Yeah.
Yeah, and I bring it up because I've been in two extended Facebook discussions with a mutual friend of ours. I'm not saying on his wall, but rather with a lot of people on that wall that are attacking both Amy Goodman on one thread and Noam Chomsky on another as gatekeepers. And there's nuances to that. There are people who think, well, they don't want to go too far and then lose their audience or be dismissed as conspiracy theorists. And then there are people who dismiss their work entirely because of these few issues. And it brings to mind to me the way that liberals have so much infighting, and the way that everybody thinks their way of changing the world for the better is the perfect one. And if you're not following their way, then they dismiss you too.
Right.
Instead of bringing us together. So I just kind of wanted to bring up that little side story to sort of get your opinion on, the limits of certain newscasters or podcasters or academics to go so far and not want to step over certain lines, and what you think about that.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll have to tell you that I don't listen to NPR regularly. I don't listen to or watch Democracy Now! On a regular basis. I occasionally will catch 5 minutes while I'm commuting. And so I don't have a deeply formed opinion, and I don't have a lot of data or input to make those kinds of judgments on. What I will say is that I know over the years that Amy Goodman has avoided the 9/11 story, and she appears to be quite hostile to people who raise serious and legitimate questions about the official narrative. I also feel that in many cases they have not really done very good coverage about election integrity issues and the compromised elections that we have seen all too frequently, including 2016. So, one of the reasons that I don't devote a lot of time to these other outlets is that I don't like to limit my own perspectives based on the lines that they draw, and the boundaries that they set up. And so my news gathering is maybe a little more, how can I put it, more of a shotgun approach than any kind of where I listen to the same 5 people every day and then make comments based on that. But the criticisms that have been raised about Amy Goodman and Democracy Now!, I think deserve to be aired. And I think that, no one is above criticism, and that includes myself. I think that we have to be honest, that we all have certain biases. We come to this position of covering and commenting with experiences and cynicism that's developed over time. I will freely admit that I'm biased about the FBI, and anybody who listens to me on a regular basis is going to pick that up. My bias is based on over 40 years of covering the actions and the misdeeds of the FBI, and so I feel that bias is well earned, and I am not, in any way reticent to share it or expose it. So, with that said, I think that criticism of Amy Goodman is healthy, and I think that, you're certainly entitled to the views that you expressed. And I sometimes have the same kind of questions about, why was an interview set up that way? Why did they bring in this particular person? What was the role that they determined in pre-production that person was supposed to play? And, often the answers aren't obvious or easy to find. But I think that critical consumption of news product, if you will, is a really important role for every consumer of information in this country.
I agree. We come exactly from the same point. What I was seeing were people who were dismissing all the great work that Amy Goodman and Noam Chomsky do otherwise. Mm-hmm. As if, because they're gatekeepers, they can't be trusted for anything. And if I cut out my knowledge of what I've learned from Noam Chomsky, I'd probably have half the knowledge I do right now.
Right. But we should never worship Noam Chomsky based on his work, and he has an incredible body of work. But right. I think, and I've seen the exchanges. Mark Crispin Miller is pretty critical of Chomsky, particularly in respect to recent events. And I think that, those views should be aired, and that Chomsky should not be dismissive of his critics. That's right. Chomsky has been very rough on 9/11 truthers, and
absolutely.
I don't respect that or respond to it, but it doesn't lead me to dismiss much of the other great work that he's done.
Exactly.
And I hope people will take me on a case-by-case basis. If you think I'm totally full of shit on a given subject, I hope that won't prevent you from at least considering, my view on another topic.
Absolutely.
All right, Ian, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you today.
Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your birthday.
I sure will. Can I have a great birthday weekend? Thank you for all the greetings I've received. I will try to respond on Facebook to everyone who has posted or sent some kind of a birthday greeting. I'm very grateful for your support and to be connected to so many interesting and wonderful people all around the world, and I enjoy doing this podcast, and it's fun doing the live Fridays here for that very reason. So I'll be back again live next Friday. I've got podcasts coming at you every day at peterbcollins.com. I bring you 1 to 3 in-depth interviews each week, depending on how scheduling goes and when I can connect with people. And that is what I'd like you to know. Thanks for joining me. And Roy Rogers, play me out, will you? I'm Peter B. Collins. I'll talk to you soon.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.